Welcome back to The Haunted Beard, everybody. Thanks for joining me. I decided to make a little bit of a different type of video today. Robert Eggers' Nosferatu is releasing in theaters in a few weeks, and it is my most anticipated film of the year. And so I figured this would provide a good opportunity to go back to the original classic film from 1922, Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror. This was a first-time watch for me, and it is a film that even 102 years later is still pretty impressive, as there is a lot here I really appreciated and admired. I always love going back into horror history and seeing some of the classic films that came before and seeing how influential they were and how much they really shaped the horror landscape into what it is today. And this is another great example of that even all these years later, this is a film that is still so important, memorable, and highly influential. Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror is a German film directed by F.W. Murnau, starring Max Schreck as the iconic character Count Orlok. It's no secret that this is a film that is based directly and adapted from the original Bram Stoker's Dracula. However, due to some legal battles, they were not allowed to use the name Dracula. One of the things that always interests me when going back into older films, and more particularly silent films, is how the directors implement visual storytelling. Given their limitations they had without being able to use sound, everything has to be communicated visually, with the exception of some title cards here and there to deliver some exposition. Everything has to be told visually, and large parts of that are reliant on the performance by the actors. But in Nosferatu's case, the original print, based on my understanding, was not released in just straight up black and white, but it included these colored filters. Now, there are three major color filters that are used throughout the film, one of them being kind of a yellowy gold sepia tone, the other one being more of a light blue tone, and the final one being kind of a soft pink tone. And these different colors and tones are used to communicate different settings and locations, either being interior or exterior in some cases, but mostly they are used to communicate the time of day, whether it being early morning, midday, or during the night. Another aspect that I particularly like to focus on with these older films is the shot composition. And it's something that really stands out more in these older films compared to the films today, because for the most part, there is no camera movement. It's mainly all just a set the camera, point, and shoot. There's no tracking shots, there's no steady cam or dolly shots. So every shot is a still static image, and so each individual shot is very carefully thought out and framed. One of the things I noticed that Murnau does is he often frames his characters under doorways or arches, and it's just kind of a repeated visual technique that Murnau uses. He creates imagery, and the way he frames and composes his shots that is very engaging to the eye and very appealing to the eye. Great films are meant to transport you to a different time and place, and Nosferatu does just that. This is a film that literally it feels like you are traveling back in time. It feels so foreign and so distant from our world today that it really provides such almost an otherworldly type of experience to it. So many films that are made today use a lot of money to try to appear authentic, especially if they're not set during modern times. But the cool thing about watching a film this old is that it doesn't have to try to be authentic or appear that way. It really, truly is. And there's something about watching this 102-year-old film that because of that authenticity, it really feels like you're watching something unique and special. As I said earlier, silent films largely rely on visual storytelling to communicate to the audience, and the main way films do that comes through the performances by the actors. And of course, the highlight in this is the performance by Max Schreck as the now iconic character of Count Orlok. And his performance really is captivating. He's only in the film a grand total of 9 minutes, but every single second he is on screen, you can't take your eyes off of him. And given the fact that he has no dialogue, it's really incredible how impactful his performance is. And it all has to come really through his facial expressions, his movements, and his body language. But man, he just really sells it. The look of him even today is still really unsettling and creepy. But every time he turns his head or shifts his eyes, I just found myself smiling because I was so impressed with how effective it was. I also have to give a quick shout out to the character of Knock, who is the property broker and Orlok's correspondent. This guy is almost as creepy looking as Count Orlok himself. The sequence later on where he is put into a psychiatric ward and then escapes and is chased down by an angry mob, I think is one of the highlights, and his performance here is quite effective. It's also really cool as well to see some of the earliest implementation of editing techniques that are even still used today. There's a couple sequences in this film that use cross-cutting, where the movie is simultaneously cutting back and forth between two different locations or storylines that are unfolding. There's a sequence that occurs roughly an hour into the film where we cut between 3 different plot lines. One where our main protagonist Hutter is in the hospital recovering from a fall. His bride Ellen is at home and she receives his letter. Meanwhile, Count Orlok is on the boat headed back to the town of Wisborg. And as I said, this is a technique that is still used today, and it's very effective at increasing the tension and making the film more exciting, as it pulls us into multiple unfolding plot lines, and we become more engaged with the film, and we watch with anticipation how everything is going to play out and unfold. I've already spent some time discussing the visuals of Nosferatu, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention some of the iconic imagery. If there was such a thing as a horror movie Hall of Fame, Nosferatu would undoubtedly be in it, including some of the individual images that this film captures. Shots like Hutter seeing Nosferatu awake in the middle of the night as he seemingly sleepwalks into his room. To shots of Nosferatu in the coffin and seeing an up-close shot of his face. To the shot of Count Orlok's shadow ascending the stairs. And finally, what is probably my favorite shot of the film, where Orlok is aboard the boat and he literally resurrects out of the coffin. Nosferatu is one of the most influential, impactful, and important horror films ever made. It stands the test of time, and it is still influencing movies even today. If you call yourself a horror movie fan, you owe it to yourself to go back and watch this absolute classic. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I greatly appreciate it. I want to give a quick shout out to all my patrons. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for your continued support. I am very grateful. Next up, I plan on reviewing Werner Herzog's rendition of Nosferatu, which is Nosferatu the Vampire, which came out in 1979. Well, that's all I got for you today. If you got anything out of this video, go ahead and do me a favor and do not click that subscribe button unless you want to be haunted by the beard.